write it for the government.
Yeah, he's writing it for. He's obviously doing naked. I want to do it naked. Having a good time. It was New Year's Eve. Just
Yeah, fuck you too, bud.
just ruined the tent.
I love it though.
Welcome to Smartly Uneducated. Evan is not here today, but we have Mr. J. Mr. J's back. Yay!
Thanks for having me back.
So what we were talking about, or what we're going to talk about, was the concept of multiple realities. I guess touch on time travel technically, because there's something I was thinking about time travel, which is what I'll talk about later once we get into the topic, because it kind of segues into it. Because if anyone, and this kind of like, this is going to play onto a lot of information that's from the Gateway experience, which is CIA classified files. So if anyone is unfamiliar with that, you should get familiar with it. And I can put the link for the book in the description. So we're not talking about the book. We're just talking about things that were from the book that do kind of, that play into this. So, anywho. What we were talking about was, before we even started, was the concept of multiple alternate realities and universes where there would be other versions of us potentially, or who knows. And you were kind of going on about something, but then I kind of cut you off. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the way that I view, if you watch different theories whenever it comes to like other universes kind of paralleling ours, and you think of storylines that have been told in reference to that, such as having, basically a bunch of doppelgangers that are out there. Who knows how many universes, who knows how many replicas essentially of yourself, or that you may be of somebody in whatever, that universe is, and how they may be living a similar fashion life, or they could be following a storyline that you chose to go a different route on. Whatever it may be, everything is so similar. Your parents are going to be your parents. Your friends are going to be your friends. Your relatives are going to stay the same in that dimension. Mm-hmm. Even though it's not yours, why would you have like a replicate of your life over here? Wouldn't it be completely different? Different people, different beings, different everything.
There might be.
And there might be. I mean, we don't have that answer, but the theory that we could have other versions of ourselves, that when we were at a crossroad, we went this way, and that's whenever we separated and started a whole new one that went this way, and that could have created another burst in the universe and created a whole new theory. So there'd be an unlimited amount.
To give some clarification on what you're saying, this plays right into it. So if you look at what a Taurus looks like, and no, not the fucking horoscope. I'm talking about Taurus. It's Taurus. They actually show an image of that, illustration of it in the Gateway experience, which I will put one up for everyone to see, which I already pulled it up for you to see. So that's what a Taurus looks like.
Right.
So I'll make sure the viewers can see it. So that's what a Taurus looks like. So the idea of that is that that's essentially very similar to what our universe looks like.
Right.
On a scale, a large scale. That's essentially the different things. That's the shapes and the trajectories of everything that's in movement, that's going on within our universe, all the way down to a planet, or having a moon orbiting a planet. Right. Things of that nature. And with that being said, so there is a thing in there where when the shape, if you look at the shape, according to them, when you look at the shape of our universe, and everything's constantly rotating in this type of shape, right? Basically, when you rotate around the cusp, I think they said word for word, the cusp of our universe, and they say, we'll just call it the egg of our universe, on the cusp of it. Essentially, you loop back in. So if you look at that shape, there's a centerpiece, like inside it, like imagine a donut, and it's in the centerpiece of that donut.
Right.
Particularly this image right here, the center of that donut. When it rolls around the cusp here, next thing you know, it's coming back up into the middle. So hence why I was telling you about time travel, right?
Yeah.
Because if you look at so for instance, like I think it's the Andromeda Galaxy. Don't quote me on this. The galaxy that we can actually see with the naked eye, and it just looks like a light, right? Like a star, essentially. Well, you have to remember that's like however million or billion light years away.
Billions of light years away.
So in a way, we're seeing the past because all those stars that are inside that's creating that light.
Yeah, what's going on there
out.
right now is by the time it actually presents itself as a light to us, it's long gone.
So that right there made me get onto this way of thinking. So I was thinking of that, seeing into the past, thinking of time travel in that aspect, right? So then it's just like, oh, well, at the same time, so if we're rolling around the cusp of the egg, what if that's just on the cusp, like where it is in its trajectory, right?
Yeah.
By the time we see something, so let's say there is other, let's look at all the different universes in a torus. Imagine one giant torus with multiple universes all in it.
Yeah, I mean, scattered all across
and they're all
it.
rotating around. And like you could even pull in the theory of deja vu. Maybe that's because when it's going around the cusp or one particular rotation that universe is, and it gets close to our universe, things start going, hoo, what's going on here? There's like electrical tinglies going on. Hence why people get deja vu. You could pull that theory or say that.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that's a real thing, but it could be. We're all just talking here. But when you get past that, that's what led me into the other stuff with like UFOs, and people claim that maybe they're from the future, things like that, or like a different point in time.
Right.
Well, maybe it's because they figured out how to harness that ability with, by the time we see them, or how they can go in and out of things, maybe it plays a role into the torus because they know how to utilize the torus now since they understand the physics and what's really going on.
Right.
And they're able to utilize it in that way. Sorry. And
but
to play on what you were saying, I felt like all of that, especially the first part of what I said, plays into what you're talking about.
I mean, it could in a capacity. I mean, when I look at it, to me, it's just the concept of if you are walking down the street and you see someone who looks identical to you, they're not of relation, but you just look the same and you go, oh my God, I saw my doppelganger today. Yeah. Well, essentially saying that there's all these different universes where there could be a bunch of versions of us living lives and stuff. And if we're on this torus and as we're spinning, we could be essentially looking at that. We could be seeing that at moments in time and having that question and that wonder. And we're just not advanced as a civilization yet to be able to harness what it is we're seeing and comprehend it and understand it, which I think is a huge thing. I mean, you look at how technologically advanced we've come in 100 years. You look how technologically advanced we've come in the last 20 years. There's still so much that we don't have answers to, but we're reaching pretty freaking hard to try and get an understanding because more people want to know what's going on. So a lot of this is going to remain theoretical for a long time. I mean, and that's what, I mean, a lot of it's a guessing game.
Like you and I, and me and Evan say it all the time as well, is that we're retarded.
We're smartly uneducated. I mean, the name is...
That's why we named it that.
Well, I mean, but I mean, you think of like the name of that right there, that's smartly uneducated. I mean, we went to public schools in the United States. So we weren't being trained to be real forward thinkers. We just happen to be those types. We have to be the type who like to question.
Public schools were literally invented to create employees.
Well, they were created to create people to work in factories, and things of that nature, of how to be in line, how to show up on time, how to do this consistently every hour of the day for 8 hours a day.
You to be a 9-to-5 employee or 8 to 4.
Yeah, and I mean, 100 and some years ago, whenever the system was incorporated that way, it was beneficial to what they had going on. Nowadays, you look at how it is; they haven't upgraded that system, but they've upgraded everything else.
I bet you there's a fucking universe out there, dude, that borders ours, some alternate reality where they've established something like a system where people don't have to work. People just chill and do whatever the fuck they want.
But we're trying to establish that.
We're nowhere near that.
But I mean, are we that far though? I mean, if you look at it in clear hindsight, I mean, we are developing more and more jobs to be based on technology. Mm-hmm. So I mean, mass production of anything is going to be mostly automated. They're trying to incorporate transportation to be automated. They're trying to incorporate
when you go to the fucking far along on that too.
When you go to the grocery store, it's automated. You don't even have to go. They'll deliver it to you. You can place your order online. Like, I laugh like with my dad all the time and say that we are turning into the movie WALL-E. You think of all the great, AI movies where, AI takes over and you have all these complications and stuff that have come out, Terminator being fucking top notch. Mm-hmm. But man, WALL-E is so much.
Nothing else.
Well, but like.
That's it.
But you think about just how society is natured. I mean, a couple of years ago, we have a pandemic and everybody cocooned inside their homes. And now it's been a fight to get them back out, because everything was so convenient to just have to you,
just be home.
Yeah. I mean,
you don't have to go to the office, didn't have to deal with all that bullshit.
But again, with that comes with the idiocracy of America, or the idiocracy of our society in general, because we become so self-reliant on those things that, again, you stop asking questions, you stop retaining information, because if you have a phone, it's right there, it's easy and accessible to you. So things in this nature, when you start to add the complexity of what could be, when you're talking about, other universes and things like that, people's biggest reference is going to be whatever Marvel movie they've watched recently. They're not going to really dive deep into the what ifs. What could it be? What's the possibility of this? And really ask complicated questions to continue furthering the growth of information that we get.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's, and I do highly believe that there's other life out there, because if we're the only life out there in the universe, they really fucking dropped the ball. And I think there's ones that are out there that are really old, and they've probably been through a lot of the same struggles that we have of, who's going to be the most powerful person on this ball, that's floating through space.
I'm really convinced that, so I know that we said when we introed into this podcast, we were going to talk about alternate realities, things of that nature, multiverse, which we are. It all kind of goes hand in hand, and then of course there's segues into other things like we just did. But I really think on a life level in the universe, especially ours, I really think that Earth is just basically a zoo. That's what it seems like. It seems like, especially with the UFO phenomenon and all these things that are coming to light, it just really feels like it's more of, this is someone's science experiment.
Well, I think it's all a science experiment, but
and then there's halfway claims with some science to back it up and some not, of showing that we are evidently a product of a forced evolution, someone someone intervened,
right,
and
100%
sped up the process. So it's
but again, you think of how we are as a society, and we do the same thing to the creatures that we have here. I mean, the oh god, what is that bee that is just absolutely dangerous? It can kill you. It's like an African whatever bee or something like that. You can look it up and find it. But
the killer hornets or whatever they're called.
Yeah, it's like an African killer hornet or African killer whatever it is. It was a genetically modified, insect.
It was a bee or a wasp?
I can't recall. I think it was a wasp, but
I'm sorry, keep
it's called killer something. Killer wasp, African killer wasp, something like that.
Yeah, I think it's called Asian giant hornet.
It could be that one. I'm not sure. There's that one, I believe, is the one that'll attack other hives of bees and just rip their bodies apart. They're completely
bees
vicious.
Or hornets? We have to be specific.
Well, I think it's a killer wasp or killer bee. Type in killer bee.
All right, let's see what it comes up.
It's like an Africanized bee right there. So it's
Wait,
called
which one? That one?
Yeah, the Africanized bee. So it was genetically modified to basically be this horrible thing. I mean,
Okay. I'm going to read
hunt
it
you
real
down.
quick.
Yeah.
I'm going to read it real quick. So it says the Africanized bee, also known as the Africanized honeybee and colloquially as the killer bee, is a hybrid of the western honeybee produced originally by crossbreeding of the East African lowland honeybee with various European honeybee subspecies such as the Italian honeybee and the Iberian honeybee. So yeah, it was genetically modified. They breeded it with other things.
If you consider the fact that we as humans do the same thing, as soon as we had the knowledge to start doing it, which again, if it happened to us, why would we not then incorporate the same thing?
Oh yeah.
So we're going to take different species, we're going to test on them, we're going to try and crossbreed them and modify them because hello, it happened to us. You know, we're trying to do essentially the same thing on a smaller scale. We're just not of the intelligence and the abilities to do it like they did, to where they could go into a planet and if they wanted to, you know, modify and change the life. The people, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, again, I'm a fucking idiot, so what do I know?
Yeah, take it with a grain of salt. This is all just talking.
Yeah, I mean, it's all theory. Everything on it is theory, but like the way I look at it is our planet is, and whenever it came to be, to start sustaining life, just is at an ideal place with where it's located from its sun. You know, you think about the planets that are in front of us. We have no information and we don't study them because they're too hot to go and do anything to, because they're too close to the sun.
They have some information on them.
Minimal. I mean, they know, but
Yeah,
you think about
it's not like you can actually go there and go, oh, yeah.
but
let's
you
do
think
like a
about the
real
information
forensics.
we have on Mars. We know that there's oceans underneath the surface. We know all of this because why? It's the next planet behind us. So the sun is like a giant magnet and it's just drawing everything in. So as these planets get closer and closer and closer, you think about the planets that are right next to the sun. They're too hot to sustain life, water, the normal environment that you need for life to live. We happen to be on a planet that is just in that cusp of where it can do those things. It's not too cold because it's not too far away, so everything's not dust and frozen. It's not too, you know, close, so it's not burning up. It's right there in the middle, you know, the three bears in the woods, you know, it's that perfect porridge. And that's my theory on it, is our planet is just in line with its sun enough to where the environment is okay to sustain life. Life started to grow. And it's been growing for millions and millions of years. And then you can have some outside forces that come in, look at this subspecies, and go, there is higher intelligence out of this species than any other species we can find. They have dexterity, they have thumbs, they have everything else. Let's modify them, you know. And they could have been a type of humanoid. They could be related to, you know, chimpanzees and everything else. But it didn't have to be that specific one, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't just, oh, we're related to chimps, we must have come from chimps. Well, there wouldn't be any fucking chimps if we did. But if we came from a subspecies that's very similar attributes.
I think one of the if anyone's listening to this, correct me if I'm wrong. Put it in the comments. I'm not going to take the time to look it up. So, like, take it with a grain of salt. So if I misplace a name, you know why. Well, with what you just said, that would go on the lines of, like, yeah, we probably didn't come from a chimp. But what if there's talk, in loosely based talk of like, for instance, like the Anunnaki, right? That the idea is that somewhere in there, in that lore, that myth, is that they breeded Neanderthals with something, another species on the planet, maybe a monkey or some type of ape of that nature, and that's how you got us.
But I mean,
of course, with other genetic modification that they potentially.
But
did.
why would you need to take a Neanderthal, which is more?
Because Neanderthals they may have been dumb because they were wanting to create a slave.
Right, but listen to this. So, like, you have a Neanderthal, which is the closest thing to a humanoid at that point in time in history of our planet, right? So you're going to take it and you're going to breed it with this subspecies over here, which doesn't have any, say, higher intelligence or anything else. Or you can just go in and modify the DNA. Like,
it may not be that simple. Maybe it's because they don't know how to. Because think about it, the replication of, like, let's say cloning, right? Let's say you wanted to genetically alter a animal. Well, the easiest way to do that is to breed it with another thing. So, like, you inseminate it. So you, instead of having them fuck, you take its jizz.
Well, you need it to reproduce,
Yeah.
but you need what it reproduces to be able to have cognitive function and other aspects of growth when it comes to the brain to develop at a higher rate, which would be easier to do not with two different subspecies that you're bringing together.
Well, I get where you're coming from.
Yeah, if you had two Neanderthals and you could get one's female, one's male, and you get the DNA from each one, and then you go in and alter it and then implant that into the womb of the mom, well, the baby that she produces is going to spike. I mean, they were doing studies on children in China over that, not that long ago. They were sitting here taking these children and doing studies on them to make them smarter, to make them faster, to make them do these things. And I mean, they did see progress from it. It was completely immoral, but they still did it anyways. It's China. But if you think, I mean, it's kind of like the theory of, the evolution of how we went from chimps to humans was through eating psilocybin mushrooms. And having a psychological, just your endorphins are going to be going insane. So you're going to be able to have thoughts that a normal chimpanzee wouldn't normally have. Like, well, maybe
also the whole theory of the chimps of monkeys, because there's that one guy who's like that fungus expert who talks about, he's on JRE talking about it, and this was like something he said, which had to do with, he's talking about this type of stuff.
Right.
And he was saying that at one point in time, where these apes used to travel through was, what we know for a fact, was littered with these natural growing magic mushrooms everywhere, and they would eat them. Like, that's what monkeys will eat fungus. Like, they do that. And it's like, if they eat that, it's not just giving this like, endorphin release. It's whenever you ingest mushrooms, especially certain mushrooms, especially ones of these calibers, you have to remember what that fungus is doing to your brain.
Technically, it's poisoning you. I mean, technically,
your body sees it as a poison, and your brain.
Well, that's why that's why it releases the endorphins that it does to the brain and everything else, because it feels this come in, and your body's natural instinct is to go, whoa, what's going on?
Yes,
and go against it. The question that I have is, when they go and say that there's a possibility that this species of chimp-like beings would travel, they would come across here and they would consume these. Could you not replicate that study today and have those same things, give them to the same?
Well, they do. And that's what I was about to get onto. So the fungus part, when you ingest it,
right, it
helps repair your brain. So that's why they're using it now for treating PTSD and other brain injuries.
That's not what I mean by testing it, though.
No, they're doing it full blown in some states. It's not even testing at this point. It's a form of medication.
But what I mean is, like, again, if they had a concept, right, where a chimp could evolve simply by changing,
it takes a long time.
Right. So, but you could see.
We're talking about a third party force coming in and taking that concept.
I'm talking to see if that evolutionary step that we have talked about for so many, centuries at this point, is actually something that we could relay data onto today with the current ability to say, okay, let's test this. Let's give,
I think that's already happening.
And I'm sure it is.
I think it's happening all behind closed doors.
But I don't think that creature or that mammal that they're going to test this on is going to evolve to be more human-like. I don't think it's going to develop.
I don't think that was the goal. I think so the reason I even brought that up with the Anunnaki type thing is because, from what I understand, the goal of the Anunnaki was to create they wanted slave labor. They wanted an animal or an entity that was intelligent enough to do the job.
Right.
Neanderthals weren't smart enough to do what they were wanting them to do. They proved to be a little bit too dumb. So even if they were to modify it, well, all their genetics, and especially recessive genes, are all retard genes. So it's like, okay, we can manipulate this so far, but we're not getting the product we want. This is me saying, like, I'm only coming from the perspective, a theory of maybe this is why they did it this way, if this is all real, if the Anunnaki thing's real. So they're like, okay, well, we need more intelligence. Well, apes and chimps, very fucking intelligent. They are. They can learn. So it's like, okay, well, the Neanderthals are retards, but they have the strength, they have what we're looking for, like they're these brute whatever. And so, like, okay, well, what if we took these two and we manipulated this and created a new product?
So,
to do what we want.
consider this, though. Are you stronger than a chimp?
Fuck no.
So, why, if you have this species of Neanderthals...
Because they didn't want you to be too strong.
No, listen.
Think about it.
Right, but listen.
We overthrew their asses. That's why they bailed,
They are
bro.
superior intelligence.
Oh, they ain't here now. We won.
Right, but listen, like, so if you wanted to go on that category of it, of like, you have this species of Neanderthal who physically they have capabilities, but mentally they don't. But you have this other mammal species over here. They have the physical capabilities and they have the mental, ingenuity as well. Why
sorry.
combine these two in that sense?
Before you finish that, I'm not meaning to interrupt you, but before you finish that, we have to also keep in mind, we were way stronger back then. We were way stronger physically. But over the course of thousands and millions of years, however long it's been, hundreds of thousands of years, or a couple million, however long.
But
we've gotten softer and
where's
softer.
the evidence that we were physically stronger if, when you look at the past, we were actually smaller as humans?
Yeah.
Like, people weren't as big as they are today. You didn't have a lot of 6'5" people walking around
interbreeding
2,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, 15,000 years ago.
I'd throw that in there.
That was happening, but when you actually look at the history, you can't. No, I don't either. That's why I love theory talk, is because you get so many different opinions about the same topic, and no one has you can't be wrong or right.
What I
because
think
you
is,
don't know.
I'm not
neither
saying
do
that
I.
the humanoid came from this. So in this theory, and we're just hypothetically putting ourselves as if this was what happened, for the Anunnaki crap.
Right.
Basically, when we were constructed by them, right, genetically altered, whatever it was, at that time, I guarantee you that whenever things fell apart for them and they bailed, because in the Anunnaki lore, apparently there was an uprising, right?
Right.
That happened. And the Anunnaki were like, nah, we're just going to nuke everybody. Not actually nuke, but we're going to just kill everything and be done. Like, wipe the slate clean, we're leaving, we'll come back later. Because they were harvesting gold as a fuel source, because apparently when you suspend gold into atmospheres, it repairs atmospheres, but you can also make it into a fuel source. That's a fun fact. That's a real thing. You can actually do that, which plays into the Anunnaki thing pretty well if you want some credibility. Well, but if you were to that uprising, right? Let's say we weren't even fully humanoid yet. Like, let's say we were at the very primitive stage of going kind of in the direction of us, right?
Yeah.
And they created this new product. That product ended up working for them, doing their thing. Shit fell apart. They left. All that's left now is what's left of the project. Well, now you got this product here. Well, that product goes around and fucks. It fucks, fucks each other, fucks other things, maybe fucks an ape. Who fucking knows? And over the course of time of this interbreeding that obviously took place in this hypothetical, then that would lead to the representation of us. Because we already had that genetic alteration. We don't know the level of the alteration that was done to us to increase the intelligence. And since the intelligence is created, then that leads to what's the word for it? When you have higher intelligence, the innovation,
right,
creation, acceleration.
You're going to have
forward.
Societies. You're going to have everything else, because you're going to have people who are going to immediately group together to.
Anytime that there's a higher level of intelligence, that it's just enough, just right at the line, so it tends to keep steadily trying to go upwards. It tries to advance.
So again, like, everyone.
That was a tangent, bro.
To me, everyone, I feel like, wants to try and find the link of human to ape and try and say that there had to be some evolutionary chain that happened along those lines to create humans. I just don't. I don't think that's what happened at all. I think that, as crude as this is going to sound, if a guy goes and fucks an ape, it's not going to have a baby. It doesn't work that way.
It though?
It doesn't work that way.
Are we sure?
Well, I mean,
we should try it.
If you think of...
Let's go find a homeless guy. We'll pay him $1,000. Like, hey, dude, you haven't been late in a while. You stink. You smell like shit. You live on this bridge. We'll give you a nice old room. We'll doll you up. We'll give you some roses to take. There's a silver that we have a very.
You're talking about a monkey that's going to throw its shit at the dude. I don't think we have to doll
No,
him
no,
up that much.
I was going to tell him we'll have it very heavily sedated, and well,
So it's a date rape. It's an ape rape,
dude. If you're gonna put labels on it like that, what the fuck's wrong with you? It will be heavily sedated. It will still be conscious. We'll make sure it fills a consent form. We're progressive here, and we'll just kind of see what happens. Like if it works,
but
we'll make sure it's a female too.
But what I mean is,
that's
like,
kind of how it works in biology.
If you took two opposite mammals, they're not going to crossbreed correctly. It's a different.
Never know until you
try.
try.
If a different DNA code among. Well, I'm sure they've tried.
Why do you think there's so much bestiality porn out there, dude? Everyone's already trying this.
Exactly.
I've seen what those poor girls do with those horses.
And how many fucking big-titted horses have you seen walking around Hollywood? Not many.
Well, they definitely got the big dick, though.
Besides Sarah Jessica Parker, okay?
Oh my God. That's fucked.
So
that's fucked.
Is what it is. But what I mean, though, is like I don't think that we had to evolve in that capacity. I just don't think that we did. I think that as a species, we existed here whenever our start date was. Because it's like, can you tell me when apes were first presented on this planet? When they first appeared?
No.
No one's asking that question, but everybody wants to know when we first appeared.
Yeah.
We can say when we think dinosaurs first appeared, but we don't know how the evolutionary chain
or at
evolved
least using
to
their bones to go, hey,
this has been here this long. We imagine
here's
that
a ballpark.
We imagine that they lived probably during this time period. They probably thrived for this long. That's our assumption. And then you have to ask
the question, like, did apes, exist when dinosaurs
did? People?
Well, if you dive into the archaeological aspect of things, and get into geography and and geology of history, like the experts who study that stuff, who that's their life dedication.
Right.
There's that guy who is on the podcast on Rogan's podcast with the guy who wrote Chariot of the Gods, Graham Hancock.
Yeah.
Love that guy. Love him. I love his stuff. I love his questions. He does a really good job. But there's the other guy who was on there with him, who's that geologist or geographer. I think he's a geologist. He talks about the evidence of when the dinosaurs existed and the cataclysm, some form of cataclysmic event happened that wiped out not just the dinosaurs, but a lot of life.
Right,
and
the majority
life
of
that
it
was remaining is where things, nature being nature, it adapted to the environment over the course of things changing on the planet, and then as it got to that point where finally the last dice rolled over, it's like, okay, now we're sprouting something different given the conditions we're in.
Right.
And, it's like Ian Malcolm said in Jurassic Park, life finds a way.
And
that's super fucking accurate.
Well, yeah, I mean, because if you think about, if you break down what we are, what everything is on this planet, and you break it down to atoms and cells and all of that, and how they'll regrow, and the first life on this planet, the assumption is that it was microorganisms, you know? Okay, if the first thing that's on this planet that's life is a microorganism, how did that microorganism grow to be everything else, I
will say this is a bottomless conversation. There's no bottom to this. So, in this narrative,
you can dive as deep as you want to go in
bringing
theories.
Up that stuff, now we're getting into a whole level of things. All of everything what we talked about, there's so many more layers to everything.
But speaking towards time travel, speaking towards the torus theory, speaking towards all of these...
Well, torus is apparently not a theory. That's just how it is. Apparently.
To me, everything is a theory until you have physical hard evidence that you can show.
According to the Gateway experience, they did.
Show me. I mean, show it to me right now.
It's all behind locked doors.
Exactly.
That's the problem. We don't have access.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean, though, is you can get this little tidbit of information from a declassified file that says that, we figured this out. Okay, show me it. Oh, we can't do that. Well, then I don't fucking believe you.
That's why I tell you should read it. It's not a big book. Read the files. Read the whole thing.
Yeah, and
you will be fascinated.
Oh, I'll be very fascinated.
And it
I enjoy
provides
that.
you with some physical evidence because it has the actual original notes, scans
Right.
of the drawings, the layout, the math. Some of it has math on it. The
But
math
there's
that they were
there's
doing.
so much that we've done studies on to try and grasp concepts of our existence, of where we are in this universe. Like, and I think part of it is like not knowing how big everything is. For one, you look at just our solar system, it's gigantic. For us and our intelligence right now, it'd take forever for us to travel far enough, fast enough to actually see life somewhere else, because by the time we get there, life is dead here and it could be dying here, you know?
Well, with this all being said, before I drag us back up or pull us out of this conversation and move us to alternate realities and multiverses, which this kind of plays a role, because then this same topic, this whole conversation will take place about that other reality or universe or whatnot. Everything that's being said in this right now, this side tangent, sub-tangent we went on for the past like 20 fucking minutes or whatever it was. This is all stuff that I think anyone who's listening to this should look up. Look up the stuff on the Anunnaki or whatever they're called.
I mean, do your own research for sure. I mean,
everything we're talking about.
Gather your own perspective.
Oh, and then also everything we just talked about. There are so many more fucking layers to everything we just talked about. We were just like touching barely on the surface on everything we just said. So, like, if you're getting upset, I'm only saying this because someone made put a comment on the last video we did, trying to say like get our history right, and he was actually talking about something that wasn't even what we were talking about.
Well, if I can just add a little tidbit for anybody who listens to a podcast, or even this podcast, like if you listen to this and you get upset about a couple of guys who don't do this for a living having their opinions towards it and being wrong, it's not a negative. I mean, if you can provide more information and enlighten us, I guarantee you we're more accepting to that information than anything. I'd rather be able to ask a question and get an answer, or be told that I'm wrong and then give me something else to where I can go, okay, well, you proved me wrong on that, so now I'm going to kind of start thinking in a whole other kind of way about the same thing. I'm still thinking on the same thing, but I just have more information now.
Couple things. Sorry, were you done?
Yeah, go for it.
No, couple things. One, referencing the previous episode that we did on Yuri Bezmenov, former ex-KGB informant. So he, when it comes to that, and the person who commented, I don't know who they are. I don't think they're even subscribed to the channel. I'm going to give them a shout out. I think their name was, I'm going to look it up right now because I want to know the name, because hopefully he'll, watch this, because I really want him to reply to that comment, because I had asked him, because he mentioned something and we weren't even talking about half or really anything he was referring to in the comment. His name is, let me pull it. Be quiet. Here it is. Shippenberg 5 Sandhill. That's his name, YouTube name. Please reply to the comment that I replied to yours on, because he mentioned something about getting your history right, all that stuff, and then talked about something called Coin P Troll, and I could not find anything on it. I made sure to clarify that what we spoke about last podcast that Evan and I did, we were just talking about the claims that Yuri made back in these interviews of the 4-step plan to what they do, what Russia's doing to the West and other countries, for like this whole social, to destabilize a nation. So with that being said, the stuff he referred to is like 1910s and 1920s to like the 1950s is where it ended or some shit like that. So I'm like, dude, that's totally different things. I asked him to please respond to it. So if you're listening, if you somehow see this, respond to it, because at the bottom of my comment, or the reply I did, I told him that I wanted, if you have any more info, just put it on the comment. I will look into it if you have any more information, because I couldn't find shit.
And that's just where I think people need to understand that, like, people who do like podcasts like yours, or even a major podcast that people are making bukus of money off of, I mean, a lot of those are guys who just have ideas and opinions, and it's just a way to talk. I mean, it's not about I'm 100% right and I know everything and I'm trying to tell you how intelligent I am. this is what my brain does on a regular basis when it tries to do the same thing that everybody, like, there's the people who find those answers through religion, and that is good for them because they can focus on that. This is how I was created. This is where I go after I die. You know, I'm happy. I can live that life, and that's all I need. That's great. You know, me, I'm the type of person to where I'm like, nah, it's got to be more complex than that. I want to know more. I want to ask more questions because it can't be that simple in my mind.
Yeah.
It just can't, you know? And so that concept that I have of, like I say, the sun being a giant magnet, we're all being pulled, our planet's just at a point to where it can sustain life and do that. As we get closer and closer and closer and closer to the sun and it starts to get too hot for society to live, the same thing will happen on the next planet coming forward.
I don't think we're getting any closer. I think what it is, so it's not that I think. If you look at how astronomy works, and you know, if you look into astronomy and you see how orbits work and everything, we always get closer to the sun, but then we also get farther away from the sun.
Well, we have a trajectory as we go around the sun to where we don't make a perfect circle. It's an oval. Yeah, yep. But that's our rotation around it. Mm-hmm. But that has nothing to do with a gravitational pull that's moving us.
Well, I mean, that's
it could be inches that you're moving.
I get it.
You know,
but you have to also remember is that you when you take in all the physics into account and everything going on with how the orbit goes,
right?
There are other things that. So if something's trying to pull us in, there are a litany of other factors that are going in to keep us from getting pulled in, that are working in the opposite direction. So it's like, unless I forgot what astronomist said it. He basically said, like, the only way that we would get knocked into where our orbit would change to where we would really actually start getting pulled in to the sun would be there would have to be some form of cataclysm event outside of our planet that caused a physical, like, something physically would have to intervene to cause that.
If so, we're in orbit.
You know what I'm talking about?
Right, but listen, like, so we're in orbit around the sun just like every other planet. Why is it in that orbit? Because of a gravitational pull.
Yeah.
The sun has, just like our gravitational pull. You get outside of our gravity, you're floating. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But once you're inside of it, it's going to pull you down to the ground. Mm-hmm. It's a magnet. It's magnetic. It's pulling you in the same way that the sun has us all in rotation around it.
You're saying it's like magnetism. I wouldn't say it is magnetism because the theory of gravity, because they can say it's not a theory because they actually found evidence to prove what gravity actually is now. And that was recent. That was in the past couple of years. But gravity has always been a theory because when Einstein created his mathematical equations and proved that, you know, the moon rotates around us. Everything rotates around the planet. Each individual thing has these rotations. He had the mathematical equation for all that back when Einstein was alive. He made that.
The moon doesn't rotate around us.
What?
The moon doesn't rotate around us.
No, it's in our orbit. It orbits around us.
We spin.
Yeah.
It's just stuck.
The face is always stuck doing this.
But it's stuck in the same spot.
But no, if you look at the equations, it's technically spinning, but it's not spinning. So think about it like this.
But what I'm saying is it's not doing this around us.
It actually is. It actually is in a weird way. So let me just explain it. So imagine you have a globe, right? I dove into this, dude, because I wanted to understand the science behind it.
Go
so
ahead.
This is in the equation. So imagine you have a globe, like you know, you can spin it with your hand, right? Imagine the globe's right here. As we're rotating, right? The moon is rotating around us. As it's rotating around, we see the same face of the moon the entire time. So, right? So it's rotating around like this. That moon is actually rotating. We never see it from our perspective of it rotating because it's, so imagine a globe again. It's 2 points at the top and bottom where it is making it to where the globe, like your little toy globe you can spins.
Right, the pole.
Right? Imagine it being more of a torus. Hence the torus. So the torus goes around. So instead of it being a direct pull, now instead, since it has an object in the way, imagine it imagine a whisk. They use the whisk things, how it kind of arcs around itself.
Yeah.
Imagine that arcing around the Earth, right? So or from the side, because it's orbiting around us like this or whatever. So as it's going around, it's actually spinning we never see it spinning because of where the hinge points for it to spin, and it's in this torus. We never see that perspective, but it actually is rotating. It's just rotating.
I'll have to do
around
more
us.
research into the torus thing to kind of get a better
Imagine
perspective.
A string. Imagine you.
Well, no, I understand the concept of what you're
I'm laying out for
explaining.
the listeners.
Yeah.
So imagine you have a string, right, or a rope. You take that rope and you tie it to a rock, right, like a big rock this big.
Okay.
You tie it to it. You take that and you start spinning in place and trying to sling it out. So you're holding the rope and you're using your the velocity of getting the velocity of spinning it, and that inertia. It will then suspend up in the air and sling around you because you're spinning with it, right?
Right.
Imagine that rock being the moon,
And you're the Earth.
and you're the Earth.
Right.
That's what's going on.
Right.
In a way, element super.
Well, but again,
lightweight of
it's
elements.
moving with the Earth. It's in Earth's
orbit.
Mm-hmm. But when I'm trying to say like it's not spinning around the Earth, I'm meaning if the Earth is here and it's doing its thing around the sun,
It's not spinning on its own independent like axis like us.
Yes,
going around.
It's not doing this around.
I just
us.
wanted to clarify because I didn't want people to. It's just I feel like when we talk, part of the problem is when I hear people talk about this stuff, especially getting into stuff like this or other podcasts or other random tidbits that people put out there, false bullshit like flat earthers do constantly. God, I can't stand flat earthers. And they do that. So when they do that stuff, they leave out like 99% real information that's proven to be fact. And so like with that, not that you were trying to dissuade or say like, oh, it doesn't spin. You were talking about you were talking about something in particular.
Yeah, so like when I'm
overall.
talking about my theory on it, because again, it seems like every decade or so, what we thought we knew about this changes, and what we think we know about it today is going to change 50 years from now. But like when I look at it in that perspective, if the sun has a strong magnetic pull or gravitational pull, whichever one that it is, it could be magnetic.
Well, yeah,
I mean,
like I said, the
core of the sun, right?
Yeah.
How do you prove it? You're not going to dive into it.
I know. I just try to fact check things. I misspeak a lot.
But again, this is just theory. This is just my theory. You can't fact check my theory. It's mine. But if we're on this gravitational pull, this magnetic pull, whatever it is, being pulled into the sun, it's very minute in how far we move over a large amount of time.
I don't know why that was funny to me. Just minute.
But
keep going.
For the amount of time that we're going to move a foot closer to the sun could take 10,000 years. Who knows?
Or a million years.
Or a million. You don't know the depth, and I'm sure there's a way that we could measure it in some capacity.
They may already have information on this and equations that we aren't looking up or don't know about. So,
but in the same concept of people who want to talk about global warming and all the other stuff, like if you're being pulled in closer to the hottest freaking thing around you, of course your climate's going to change. It's changed on this planet a million times already, but if you're constantly moving a little bit closer, a little bit closer, a little bit closer, a little bit closer, and you have all these people who are going, eventually this planet's not going to be able to be inhabited whenever that time has come. You have people like Elon Musk, who's been on the rampage with this for a long time. There's something there. There's some kind of, it has nothing to do with us digging into the ground, having cows farting in a field or burping or anything else. It's just because it's just the natural course that our planet is going to take. And once this planet gets to this range to where it's no longer inhabitable, over a certain period of time, this one's going to move into that range as well.
I have a question.
Because, hold on, let me finish.
Sorry.
So if you have a planet such as Mars, which has oceans underneath its subsurface or its surface right there, and underneath it you have water and you have minerals and you have organisms and you have all this, but it's dormant because the temperatures aren't right for it to be on the surface and thrive. The environment's not right. It'll either just die out, freeze, whatever may cause it, because it's too far away. It moves within this range, and now it's starting to position itself to the early life of Earth. And as soon as it gets there, now the environment starts changing. You start having weather clouds that start forming. It starts nourishing the ground. You start getting moisture. You start getting these different environments. It starts building up this gravitational field and everything else because it's in that zone, that perfect life-sustaining zone right here. And then it has a shelf life. This planet might be in this zone for 12 billion years. And then it dies and it goes on to the next one. And as the sun keeps consuming, it grows, it gets bigger. And by the time it's done, the thing turns into a black hole, you know, and that's what it does. You know, that's what these stars do. When you look at stars that have already exploded and those suns have already burned out, I mean, if it's consuming all of this and it's just expanding and expanding until it goes boom, it would make sense. That star that we look up and we go, oh, that used to be a sun. Well, it could be life. We're just now getting the light. You know, it could have the same kind of environment and planets, and it could have 30 planets in its solar system. And it could have 2 that are able to be in rotation and have life on them. And who knows? There's so many different concepts that could go with that.
So I have a few different things.
Okay.
I sent you a text. You should read it. I know I'm right. 100%.
You and my wife both just sent a very funny message. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So 2 things, or a few different things. So let me get this all out. Going off, the first one has to do with what you're talking about with the sun pulling in a planet, right?
Okay.
So as the course of that happens, and you know that would be over if it's doing it naturally over a very long course of time, no third party. Not a third-party situation happened that caused it to just abruptly go the fuck in, or get significantly closer all of a sudden.
And I think that's where you're right on that theory. Like if something major happened inside of our solar system and then forced a big change like that, and we moved drastically closer, we'd see the change like that.
So if it's over,
but we're seeing it over thousands of years.
But if it's going over a slow amount of time, like slow for us, because our perspective of time is such a
we're a blip, you know,
that it is
or a grain of sand.
Yeah, nothing in the grand scheme of things. So it's like, with what you're saying, it made me think of this. It's like, okay, well, over the course of that time, if the planet were to get close to the sun, let's say it's 2,000 years from now. Let's say it's more than that. Let's say it's been 100,000 more years from this point right now. People are still alive. There hasn't been a war that killed everybody already, you know, like nukes and shit. And we're closer now, way more in relatively speaking than we are now.
Yeah.
And things become hotter, all that stuff. I think what my mind went to was thinking of the evolutionary concept. What would
our adaptability?
How would we have evolved physically to adapt to that environment? Given now there's a trick question. There's a loaded one. So it's like there's a loaded situation or hypothetical, whatever you want to call it. How we adapted, but at the same time, we utilize technology. Like we sit inside of like we're in an air-conditioned room right now.
Right.
You know, people would be trying to stay inside more. So it's like, would we even get the ability to physically evolve, like on a genetic level, or would that be completely cut out due to our technological advances that preserve us in the state we are now?
So if you were gonna,
you know what I mean?
If you were gonna think about it. Say, I mean, you're talking 100,000 years.
Yeah.
That's
long. You get what I'm laying down.
Right. But like, okay, let's speak on 100,000 years from today. Where would our society be in technological growth at that point in time? Because you gotta picture there's going to be rises, falls, collapses. Societies are going to pummel, and the only thing that would truly unite everyone, if we were still here at that time, would be the fact that the planet's dying. We have to all solve a problem to try and survive, because that's everybody's thing, is how do we survive? But that's the same thing with like Elon trying to go to Mars now. Like, let's try and find a way to start doing that now, because 1,000 years from now it may not be an option. Because when you think, if you do start getting close enough, what would be the expected timeline? Like, could you look up when would the Earth be too close to the sun to where it wouldn't be inhabitable? How long might that take? So if 2,000 years from now you would be to a point to where the temperatures, say in a place like Texas, are now 150 degrees all the time, Like
it would
that's
become that all
that's a mild day. You know,
Yeah.
it's like if the temperatures were that, well, there's no more farming, there's no more moisture. You know, you have no water supply. You have lakes that are drying up. You know, you have all of your means of. Hey, can we hit a pause real quick?
Yeah.
Okay,
We'll be right back.
I gotta take a pause.
Writing it for the government.
Yeah, he's writing it for. He's obviously doing naked. I want to do it naked. Having a good time. It was New Year's Eve.
Yeah, fuck you too, bud.
Just ruined the tent.
I love it though.